From the inner sense of time comes the ancient poet's rhyme, bringing us the master key to open up the mystery. From the depth of time and space, we arrive in quiet grace, finding what is meant to be as we explore the mystery, pouring forth from days gone by. We can hear the poet sigh from the depth of ecstasy, moving into mystery. Hello and welcome to Creative Connections. I'm Gary Blanchard, your host, and today my guest is a performer, photographer, and all-around creative person, Angela Cook.
Hi.
Angela, welcome.
Thank you.
So Angela, I found some of your stuff on Facebook and was just really amazed. You're into so many things.
I am.
And one that's coming up before we know it, you're a performer and you do two characters for children. One is Mrs. Claus.
Yeah.
And we actually have a picture of you as Mrs. Claus here.
I look a little different.
Yeah. So how did Mrs. Claus come about?
I have always adored Christmas since I was a little kid, and it just kind of evolved. I, as a photographer, did a lot of Santa events that were experience events, and I just embraced that experience that Santa was getting and wanted a little bit of that, you know?
Okay.
So I decided, okay, it's time to put on a wig and become Mrs. Claus and see where it goes. And I do something different than the typical Mrs. Claus that's married to a Santa or has a significant other that's a Santa. I am a solo Mrs. Claus.
Okay.
So I go out there and do solo events as Mrs. Claus and have done events as big as going to Gillette Stadium as a solo Mrs. Claus.
Okay.
So I do something small like a community event, or I go into daycares and nursery schools. I do home visits, both virtually and in person.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
How do children react to meeting Mrs. Claus?
They actually are much easier on Mrs. Claus because they're not as scared.
Yeah, well, Santa, has that beard. And he's always ho, ho, ho.
Yeah.
And, I remember as a little kid, that kind of scared me a little
Of course.
bit. I could see where Mrs. Claus would be.
She's a gentle soul, and
much more
she's,
approachable and comfortable.
Yeah. And when I do work with a Santa, a lot of the kids typically gravitate towards Mrs. Claus first. They kind of want that safety net before they go and talk to the big guy.
Okay.
So
and it's sort of a mothering thing, which takes us to the next character,
yes.
which is Mother Goose. So how did Mother Goose come about?
I love working with children.
Okay.
And Mother Goose is the epitome of the children's character. And she has the ability to do whatever she wants to do with the kids. So I don't just read stories. I do read stories as part of the Mother Goose experience, but
Right.
I also I play games with the children. So the scarves that you see hanging out of the basket there, each kid gets a scarf, and we do special scarf dances that have songs that go
fun.
along with them. I will play music on a ukulele and teach them new songs, and we take out the maracas and we practice rhythm exercises, and there's endless things that I do with them.
Yeah, so a very interactive.
Yes.
Which
Because
is-
the target age group, they don't have the attention span to sit and listen to stories for a half hour.
Right. That sounds like a lot of fun. One of the photos, and I almost used it for the show, but it had a lot of children in it, and I didn't want to get into difficulty of showing people's kids without having
Of course.
releases and all that, but the kids sitting around with you just looked like they were so happy and so enthralled.
Yes.
And
I
it
come
just-
very high energy.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. It seemed like it would be, just a wonderful experience for children. And it is tough, I think. If people wanted Mrs. Claus or Mother Goose to come to their program or their family or whatever, how would they go about doing that?
They would go to studioacentertainment.com. And they can read about all the characters that I play there. They can book characters there. They can request more information and get an idea of all the things I do.
Okay. Well, what are some of your other characters?
My most recent character that I'm performing out live as is the Duchess of Yorkshire Pudding. And she is a character of my own making. She's a completely fictitious character, which allows me a lot of liberties that I cannot take when I'm performing a character that is established. So I can only do so much as Mother Goose and Mrs. Claus. As the Duchess of Yorkshire Pudding, I can do whatever I want. And I have created the most amazing backstory for this character, and she sings songs about pudding, and she gets the kids all going. There's a lot of interaction in her show as well. She has a dragon that she has slayed with pudding. She has tamed this dragon with chocolate pudding, and she has created this wonderful kingdom where there used to be kind of sad and droll people because all they had was Yorkshire pudding for dessert. And if anyone out there has had Yorkshire pudding, it's nothing sweet. It's very savory. It's like a popover, and it's got some sort of broth or whatever from meat on top, and it's nothing like pudding. So here's this character who lived in this little village far, far away called Lemon Drop Village, and she'd only had lemon pudding, except for one time when she was a little child that she had chocolate pudding that her grandmother brought. And she remembered it. So when she met the Duke of Yorkshire Pudding, all she heard was pudding, and she only thought about that chocolate pudding. So she was very disappointed when she got there and realized it. So she changed the kingdom around, and now they all eat chocolate pudding, and they're all very happy.
Wonderful.
So she sings a lot about that.
Yeah. I've seen where the Duchess was recently at a Renaissance fair.
Yes, I performed at the Maine Renaissance Fair for 2 weekends, and in the fall, from Labor Day weekend all the way through Columbus Day weekend, I'll be performing at the Connecticut Renaissance Fair in Lebanon, Connecticut.
Okay. And you are, I think, the official photographer for the Maine?
Yes, I am also the fair photographer.
Fair photographer.
Yes, for the Maine Renaissance Fair, for the New Hampshire Renaissance Fair, and for multiple other fairs. This year in Connecticut, I am not an official photographer. I am only going to perform. I'm taking it easy this year.
Okay.
So I've got many weekends, and it's just as a performer, which is going to be wonderful.
Okay. During the pandemic, were you able to kind of virtually do these characters?
Yes, I was doing virtual performances as a part of the New Hampshire Renaissance Fair. We had what we called a Renathon, and we did 2 of them. We did one this year and one last year, where all the performers got together. They made videos, and we put them while they were live on the screen. We were live, interacting with the crowd through the chat and everything while our videos were playing, and we were
that's a nice way
interacting
of doing
before and after. So it was a great experience.
Okay, yeah. I've done a few of the online live performance things, and it's frustrating because you can't really interact with the people.
Yes.
And try to perform at the same time.
And this allowed us to interact. It was wonderful
that
because
sounds
we
great.
talked, there was an MC, so there would be someone talking and introducing you and all that, and you got to interact with the MC before your video, and then while they're playing the video, you're on the chat talking to all of the audience, and then afterwards, you're able to come back on.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
great way of doing it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I'll bet. So how did you get into photography?
I have had a camera in my hand since I was probably about 4 years old. I had a
Okay.
little Kodak Instamatic back in the day, and I used film for a lot of years. And then in high school, I studied real photography, learned how to use a darkroom. Back then, we were still using film, so we were dodging and burning with little tiny paintbrushes, and it was a great learning experience. You learn a lot about how to control your camera. And I went on to art school later on and learned a lot more intense photography there.
Okay.
And then it had to be part of my life. I can't not be a photographer. I've tried.
Well, and I would have to say that as a photographer, you do very well.
Well, thank you.
And one of the things you do is food photography.
I do.
I would think the advantage is you don't have to get it to smile.
Nope.
It's not going to blink.
Nope.
But, and I'm vegetarian, so this one particularly appealed to me.
Because it was a vegan
It was
a vegan dish.
vegan
Yes.
But the detail is just so wonderful. I can taste it just looking at it.
And that's the goal.
How do you manage to capture all that?
I used to specialize in newborn photography. And
Okay.
the benefit of that is when you're photographing newborn babies, the biggest thing you need is all of the tiny little details. Things like eyelashes and lips and their nose structure and all those little things that change so quickly. And when I switched over to start doing more food, I just used those same concepts and applied them to the food. And you find little details within the food that are very important, and you focus on those and build it around that. And I have some regular clients that have been with me for years that keep having me come back in and do all of their menu photography. And I enjoy it. I enjoy
great.
the heck out of it.
Yeah. So we have a number of restaurants in the area.
Yes.
And I would really encourage them to get some good food shots.
Well, it's wonderful for business. People need
Oh,
to see
sure.
pictures of the food. And if you have quality professional photos on your website, on your social media, it's going to make a difference. You know, you can use these on menu boards in the restaurant. It's going to make a huge
Well, and
difference.
so many restaurants, even some of the sub shops in the area, now have the digital menu
Exactly.
boards. And if you if you said to me vegan taco, I'd say, okay. You show me this picture, and it's like, when do I eat?
And that particular picture was actually something homemade in my house.
Oh, really?
So I made that at home.
Okay.
So that's my own creation. I do a lot of very healthy cooking.
Yeah, it would be hard perhaps for the folks at home to see, but each little kernel of corn here just pops out, and the pieces of tomato, and the broccoli, and the chip, and there's just like a little imperfection there in the chip comes through so clearly.
It shows you how crunchy the chips are.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it tells you it's a real chip,
Yes.
and not some.
And those little details make a big difference. I know when I have photographed endless pizzas over the course of time, and in order to get a really good shot of pizza, you have to make sure that you show the things people are looking for. They want to know what the crust looks like. They want to know the ratio of sauce and cheese to crust, and they want to know that that cheese is melty and not greasy. And you have to capture all of that on your picture.
Yeah. I could see where it would be a challenge.
Yeah.
And I'm sure among other things it takes a good camera,
Of course.
but also it takes a good eye.
Well, you have to be creative with food because you have to stage it.
Yeah. It's like and I've worked with photographers for press photos and stuff like that, and a good photographer knows how to bring out the best in the subject.
Of course.
And when the subject is food, which is inanimate, you still need to bring out the best of it.
You're not interacting with words, but you're still interacting with the...
Right.
You have to become one with the food you're photographing.
There you go.
I was at a Chinese restaurant in Amherst yesterday photographing their food, and the food was phenomenal when it came out, but it needed just a little tweaking to make it really,
Sure.
really pop. Because I want everyone to be able to taste the food by the time they look at my pictures. If they look at my pictures and they're like, okay, I'm hungry, I need that in my life, then I've done my job.
Okay, and do you have a separate website for the photography?
Yes, that would be studioacphotography.com. And
Okay.
that has an entire portfolio of all the different types of photography that I do. I do some events and limited weddings. There's weddings on there, but I do very, very selective weddings.
Okay. Another thing that you were doing, and I found fascinating, is you're doing photography hikes.
I am, since I am a very, very avid hiker, and I've done a lot of group hikes, and I've done a lot of photography instruction. I ran a high school photo club out in Rockport, and I'm constantly giving people tips and tricks on how to use their cameras. Back when I was in Rockport, I ran these scenic photo hikes, and they were very, very well attended. And so here I am in this beautiful part of the state, and I absolutely adore hiking all over the state. And I tend to find places people don't really necessarily ever find out about. So I feel like it was a good choice to combine those two passions into one business model and be able to take people out on scenic photo hikes. They're guided hikes, but in addition to just a guided hike, I'm helping them with their cameras. They don't have to have a big, huge DSLR. They can have a little cell phone, and you can still adjust that cell phone to make a really, really good photo and work on composition and lighting strategies, and that's the stuff that I work on during these hikes.
Yeah. This is absolutely beautiful. How,
That was actually taken with a cell phone.
oh, okay. And how strenuous is the trip to this?
I offer very varied strenuous, like there's different difficulty levels to
Sure.
the hikes, and this particular one, this is a very easy one. Believe it or not, you do not have to go far afield to get to this particular waterfall.
Okay, that's really nice. You know, and I know sometimes women do not like to hike alone.
Yes.
So I think having these kind of guided hikes is really great. And, you know, I take cell phone pictures, but I'm sure I could get better pictures if I knew what I was doing with the cell phone.
Of course.
So, you know, I think that's a great thing for people to find. You also have some photographs of things that you've taken, you know, like little roadside oddities.
Yes, I have a quite popular little album that I've started
Yeah, the one I saw today was the foot
over at the winery.
at the winery down near Amherst.
Yes.
But when I was looking at your site, I came across this picture,
Yes.
and this is my wife's gypsy cottage.
Oh my goodness! Oh, what a really weird coincidence that was. I photographed that a while ago.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because I hadn't seen it before, but I found it when I was looking for photos to share. And you know, you did such a beautiful job of capturing some of the magic of it.
Thank you.
So I you know.
That
and-
is such a small world,
Yeah,
right?
and you know, Carol really appreciated that somebody had found it and shared it.
Wow.
So, yeah. One thing you've done in the past is you have done some fairy and unicorn
Yes.
shots. And I have one of those here because I just thought this was so great.
They're a lot of fun. We get to get the girls dressed up in some really great outfits, and they embrace the magic. And here's these horses that are not horses anymore, and this whole thing becomes mystical. And for this particular shoot, we were actually at a castle, which made it even more. There's this place in Groton, and there's an old castle ruin there, and that's where we were. So it was totally up like way up on a hill, and
Oh, wow.
it was all fantasy. It was beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So how difficult is it to line up a shoot like that?
It's not very difficult.
Really?
I know the right people.
Okay, you know where the unicorns are.
Yes, I have a unicorn provider. I have actually 2 unicorn providers.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
You know,
So I can always get unicorns.
Oh, that's great. It just, there's something so magical about this. And what I like too is that so often if we're posing for a picture, we're screaming
Yes.
at the camera. And this just is so natural.
I like moments. I like capturing moments. They're
Yeah.
so natural and real and beautiful. I do not ever say, please say cheese. I don't do that. I will make people do something totally silly and totally out of the ordinary and make them uncomfortable for a minute almost. And inevitably, I get real smiles out of them.
That is an art too.
Yes.
Because I tend to frown the minute I get in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to one photographer, and now I don't remember just what it was that she said, but it was totally off the wall and cracked me up, and she got the most natural smile
And that's what it is.
that I have ever had in a photograph.
Yeah.
And but here it's like you feel like this fairy is just communicating with the unicorn,
Yeah.
and it's just wonderful. And what I really like, and I couldn't see it as much on my computer, but now that it's blown up, I like that you can see the tennis shoe.
A little bit of reality in the midst of the.
and I think that is just so neat too.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't a fairy wear tennis
Of course. They're not white tennis shoes. They're
Right,
very
they're-
colorful
they're
ones.
colorful
So
blue.
they're fairy enough.
Yeah. So, and again,
It was either that or she'd have to be barefoot. So
Yeah. And, sometimes you don't want to be barefoot in some places. So, but this is just, and I would imagine that for any young girl, or many young girls would love a photo shoot like that.
Of course. I typically, if I'm going to do unicorn sessions, will try to gather multiple families in one day and make it an all-day affair.
Oh, yeah. I mean, while you got your unicorn, you gotta make the most of it.
And this particular day we had 3 unicorns. So they were different sizes.
Oh, okay.
So we had different unicorns for different sized children, and
Oh, really?
yeah.
So is this like
That's the smaller
miniature?
one. Yeah.
That's the smaller
That's
one.
a miniature horse. And then there was a larger mini horse, and then there was a pony.
Okay.
So we had 3 different sizes, and the pony was large enough to hold an adult.
Okay. Do you have adults who come for fairy sessions?
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I think that we are so uptight as a society sometimes.
Yeah.
And I love when adults do childish things.
You have to embrace the whimsy in the world.
Absolutely. There is so much beauty and fun in the world, and people tend to dismiss it
Yeah.
and look at all the negative.
Yeah.
But I see something like this, and it just makes me feel so happy.
Nice.
So,
I've succeeded that
job
way.
with that. Yeah. So, what else do you have in the works right now?
I have another character that's in development.
Oh, okay.
Her name is Phoebe Moonbeam, and she is half pixie and half human.
Okay.
She has a backstory, but I'm developing stories for her to tell because her backstory is, the Duchess is very aimed at all ages. So young children are totally fine with the Duchess stories. Phoebe is a little more older children, so maybe the 7 to 12 range,
Okay.
because she has a little more of an action laden past, where she was born the night her mother was being chased by someone that was supposed to be married to her. So there's just a lot more drama involved in her that.
Okay.
So I'm trying to tone it down a little bit and make the stories much more child friendly. There's a whole series of moments where her mother is being chased by this Lord Ulrich, and he's chasing her through the forest, and she's in labor at the time, and she has to deliver the baby because she can't go any further, so she drops herself down on the ground, delivers the baby, and she has to stash the baby in the hollow of a log, and then she goes off running the other direction, and he follows her and eventually catches her. And so the father has to find the baby, and there's this whole...
Yeah. And you know, it's funny because if you look back at some of the fairy tales,
they're dark.
They are dark.
Yes.
And, you know, I think sometimes we are so set in making things light for children that we kind of miss giving them a sense of reality of life.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
Phoebe's going to be that bit of reality that the Duchess is not. The Duchess is all fluff, and she's so much fun and so light, and she's just, you feel good when you're done hanging out with her.
Will Phoebe also be playing an instrument and singing?
Yes.
Okay, so where do your songs come from?
My head.
Okay.
For the most part. I had a little bit of help writing the Duchess's first song, a musician friend of mine, but all the words pretty much came from me. He wrote one verse that came from a song that he had. So the song now is about pudding. His song was about waffles and falafels. So it was still a children's song. It has morphed quite a lot to become my pudding song. And there's a lot of animals and how they relate to what foods they might eat, and then me saying how much I love pudding. And then there's another song that I adapted, Kookaburra.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And made it into a song about this character, Sebastian, who is a dragonfinch, which doesn't exist, but I created. And I found him along my travels, and so he's a big part. He's got his own story, and so he needed his own song.
There you go.
So his song is, I've used the tune of Kookaburra.
Okay. You know, it's been such a pleasure having you here, and I am so glad you came in to share all this with people. And I really encourage you folks out there to check her websites. They are, again... StudioACEntertainment.com and StudioACphotography.com. Okay. And we thank you for coming, and I thank you all for tuning in. And I'll see you again next time on Creative Connections. From the inner sense of time comes the ancient poet's rhyme, bringing us the master key to open up the mystery. From the depth of time and space, we arrive in quiet grace, finding what is meant to be as we explore the mystery, pouring forth from days gone by. We can hear the poet sigh from the depth of ecstasy, moving into mystery.